It's going well. Brian just joined us here too.
Yeah,
Welcome aboard.
yeah.
I was gonna say, I
Hi,
think, Dan,
Brian.
we've got a few more folks still showing up. We were just checking in, Dan. Heather Woodward, who you can see on your screen, is actually out in Oregon in the thick of
Yeah.
things.
Oh,
So,
Heather, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's so upsetting. It's so terrible. Um, so yeah,
Our staff's been really lucky. I didn't have to evacuate, but two of our staff did. And of course, one of them, he's the sweetest man ever. He went down and was helping people at the evacuee center. Kind of the funniest part of all of this is that some of our schools have been turned into evacuation centers. And so we can't, even if we could play sports, we can't because there's livestock on
yeah.
all of the sports fields. So there's cows like in the outfield. It's kind of great in some ways.
There's always absurdities in these things.
Yeah.
Exactly. My organization, the Aspen Institute, has a number of employees on the West Coast. We have, I think, 26 between, along the Pacific Coast, including a couple in Oregon, a couple in Washington, and then to California. So we've been worried about that group a lot. I'm really sorry.
okay, folks. So I don't know if everyone's here yet. I know Allison wrote and said she was stuck in some faculty meeting on Zoom, but I'm sure she'll be here soon. But I just wanted to get us going to make the best use possible of Dan's time, because it's a professional privilege, but it's just a personal pleasure to have Dan join us. So Jerome, did you want to kick things off a little bit and just kind of orient people with a few news items before we jump into the meat of the day with Dan?
Yeah, it's good to see all of you.
Thanks,
This
Jerome.
is, and also I just want to say welcome to our first wave of getting you all back into the Pivotal House. So I have some updates to share with you all once we get done talking with Dan, but really good to see you all. Welcome. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. We really do appreciate it. I hope some of you have your drinks. It is Drinks with Dan. So feel free, don't feel ashamed. Yeah, okay, good. I gotta go get mine. But also, I just wanted to say, just really briefly, I'm just going to read. This is going to be the only formal part of the night, and then I'm going to kick it off over to Heidi, and her and Dan can have a fireside chat, and then we're going to open up to questions for all of you. But I'm just going to read really briefly a short bio of Dan's really quickly. So Dan is currently the president and CEO of the Aspen Institute, an organization headquartered in Washington, D.C., whose motto is "We drive change through dialogue, leadership, and action to help solve the greatest challenges of our time." Prior to heading up the Aspen Institute, Dan served as president of Franklin and Marshall College and founded the American Talent Initiative, an effort that has brought together over 100 colleges and universities with a goal of significantly expanding access for lower income students to top institutions of higher education. But of course, there's a connection to Georgetown here. Dan has worked in higher education, though he began at Georgetown University. He graduated from Georgetown with his BA in English in 1983, and after a stint at Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar and a PhD from SUNY, he returned to Georgetown in 1997 to serve as the Vice President for Strategic Development and taught in the English department. Indeed, much of Heidi's current involvement with issues of educational equity in K-12 education in DC public schools and various educational pipeline programs can be traced back to long conversations over ice cream with Dan almost 20 years ago. Dan knows the value of teachers in the lives of students. His father was a teacher in the Baltimore public schools for 40 years. Thus, the work of the Pivotal Network matters greatly to him, as do all of you. And he's keen to get to know you, and we're keen to let you all get to know him. So like I said, that's the most formal thing of tonight, and I'm gonna shift gears and pass it back over to Heidi.
That was so thoughtful. Thank you for taking the time to put that together. Thank you.
So Jerome's right. On my good days, I give Dan full credit for much of the work I'm doing, and on the bad days, I blame him for much of the work that I'm doing. But his work in the president's office at Georgetown was kind of always at the highest level, but he also at Georgetown always made time for both students interested in education and new faculty at the university who were really interested and committed to education. So Jerome was right. Dan's legendary for having an ice cream freezer, like the sort of thing you would find at like a 7-Eleven or something, like in his office, and you could like go digging in it for ice cream. And a lot of the work that I do at Georgetown, really the genesis was around kind of conversations in his office with that. He also has an uncanny resemblance to my brother, which is usually a good thing. And
Disturbing, probably.
Not exactly sure why, but there's yeah, always a strong connection. So Dan's just a good friend to this type of work and to individuals, and his support of us in the Pivotal Network has really been from the very beginning. We've had good long conversations with him. He's talked with me while he was out on a walk and I was like partway through mowing my yard on Saturday to give advice and guidance. So I don't know, he's one of my good friends, and he's probably one of the people I look up to absolutely the most in higher education. So this is great. Dan, because I sent it to you, I've got like a list of kind of questions and prompts to get us going. Should we jump into those? Do you want to just say a few words to start? How would you like to?
Yeah, I'll just say a quick fast thing, which is this idea of the Pivotal Network is inspired, and Heidi and Jerome, really I want to recognize what you're doing. Really, really important. I think, and you're like the early adopters, early joiners here. I think it's really inspired, and so I want to learn from it and be supportive of it in every way I can. So that's one thing, and then the other thing is everybody in the call is all about putting students' needs and opportunities and development first, and helping create equity in education, equity of opportunity, a sense of a flourishing mindset in our students, and an expectation among educators that we will take the work so seriously that we will really continuously develop and grow and change ourselves as people engaged with students, trying to help students cultivate the greatness that's inside of them, each person. And that, I find that so inspiring, that in the middle of everything else you're doing, your particular commitments that brought you to this network, and then you're spending time with one another to help one another, and perhaps help people that will be in this network 10 years from now that today are only, don't even know they're going to be teachers, to help prepare the way for future generations to do great work for our students. So it's just to say that, my dad was a teacher for 40 years. My mom was also a teacher, and she also was both were first generation college goers. My mom went to college as a single mom in her 30s. And maybe I'll say something about that later, but why that was so important. So I really value what you're doing. And if I can be a help, this conversation, I'll say whatever we want to talk about, support you. Or if anybody wants to follow up, you can just email me. It's just my name, daniel.porterfield@aspeninstitute.org. Just feel free anytime. Just it could be 8 months from now. But if you think there's something that I could be a help with, feel free to reach out. So on that note, Heidi, take it away. I don't know where everybody's from. I just know we have one from Oregon. I don't know the type of schools you all are working in, or other work you may be doing. We can figure it out as we go. Whatever you want to do, Heidi.
Well, I was going to say, so I'd love to give the Pivotal educators a chance at least to introduce themselves. For us, this is Old Home Week because everybody's like checking back in after the school year's gotten going. But why don't we? I'm going to just do it in the order I can see folks on my screen. So, Tiawanda Piper, it is maybe appropriate that we're starting off with you.
Hi, everybody. Yay! It's good to be back with you guys. Missed you all. Dan, it's great to be with you. I'm Tiawanda Piper. I am a science teacher in North Carolina. I've been in education, whether it's formally in the classroom or in some type of service to teachers, administrators, and campuses for 25 years. And most of my work was on the south side of Chicago, and I transitioned to North Carolina now 6 years ago. And still serving in communities where we want to see our young people really, really have an opportunity to live to their full potential, even as you mentioned, to really achieve the greatness that is in them. So glad to be with you this evening.
Nice to meet you, Tiawanda.
Dina?
Hi, Dan. I'm Dina from Southern Illinois. I've been teaching for about 18 years after I left public accounting and decided I would do something and make a lot less money and work just as many hours. But I teach business classes at a rural high school with about 1,100 students.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Robin?
Hi, I'm Robin Wright. I taught for about 40 years in 3 different public school systems, as well as teaching ESL for the U.S. Army and teaching one small time at a private elementary school. I'm an English language arts teacher, and I've taught everything in that area except maybe creative writing. And I've taught it, the 3 schools where I've taught have been vastly different. One was a rural school, one was a urban, suburban school, because it took in both, and then one was a suburban school. So anyway, so I'm retired though.
Great to meet you.
Gavin?
I'm Gavin. I'm in San Diego. This is, I'll just thinking right now, my 23rd year teaching. I've taught a lot of different subjects at a lot of different levels, middle school through high school. And right now I'm teaching AP US History.
Fantastic.
Liz?
Hi, I'm Liz Gilmet, and I am in my 17th year of teaching. I've been in central rural Maine for all of it at 2 different schools. Right now I'm at Maranacook High School, which has just under 400 students, and I teach AP language and a mix of senior classes.
Great to meet you, Liz.
Emily?
Hi, I'm Emily Byrne from Minneapolis. I teach at a Cristo Rey school, and I've been there for 14 years now. I helped open it.
Oh, that's so cool. Mariah Mendoza went to that school and then went to Georgetown. Yeah.
I taught her 3 of her 4 years. That's right.
Wow, you really propelled her. I know it's a really great place. Love to see it sometime. And I know Minneapolis has also been going through really hard times. I hope your families are doing okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Heather?
Hi, Dan. I'm Heather. I'm the one from Oregon. And I go where the district tells me. Right now, apparently it's telling me I get to be an instructional coach in addition to teaching English. So as you can imagine, we have a whole bunch of new baby green teachers. So I guess that they're my circus now. So I'll be doing that. And, you know, other than the smoke in the air, it's going well. So.
Thank you, Heather. Nice to meet you.
Anne?
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. Hello, Dan. Thanks for being with us. My name's Ann Severson. In my heart, I'm an English teacher. I currently have the job title of transformation coach. So I picture Glinda the Good Witch coming down in a bubble, but in reality, I wish that I could sit with every teacher in my school and help them figure it out individually. And I wish I could help every senior in the district with their college essay. Those are kind of the 2 things in my head right now.
And what city or state or region?
I'm sorry. I'm in Boston. I'm at South Boston High School.
Denise?
Hi, everyone. Dan, thanks for being here. I'm Denise Foster. I'm in Dallas, Texas. And like Dina, this is my second career. I've spent 22 years in the financial industry, and this is my 12th year teaching. I teach AP literature, and I've taught that for 10 years. Prior to that, I taught every other level of English. And I also have advisory now and am part of the college access team. So we're happy to have you, and I'm looking forward to this.
Do you work with the Dallas School District, or do you work with another school system or a school in Dallas?
I'm in Dallas ISD.
Yeah. I'm really good friends with Michael Sorrell, who leads Paul Quinn College in Dallas. He's such an incredible, wonderful person. So I always smile when I meet somebody else from Dallas.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Shane?
You said Shane, right?
Yep. Sorry, Shane. Yep.
No, it's okay. I couldn't quite hear it. Shane Gower, and I'm at Maranacook Community High School in rural Maine. I'm actually at the same school that Liz is at. And this is my 23rd year teaching, and I teach AP US History, AP Psychology, Ethics, and a Film Studies course. And that's about it.
And you have a shirt. It says, does your shirt say Pivotal Educators on it?
Just came in the mail today.
We're like proving the speed of the U.S. postal system, I believe, between South Carolina and Maine on this one.
Yeah.
Rita, as you roam the streets of the city?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. My t-shirt has not come in the mail yet. I just wanted to say, it's so lovely to see all of your faces. I'm Rita. Thanks for being here, Dan. I am entering my 17th year teaching in the New York City Public Schools. I teach 12th grade AP Literature and Composition and 12th grade Literature, and I'm heading up the college process for the seniors. And we still don't know if we're going to be in school in person next week, and it's Wednesday, so our hands are fairly full here. So pardon me for walking around, but I can't sit anymore
I hear
today.
you. Rita,
so.
what school do you teach at?
Brute College Campus High School, 25th and Park.
Yep.
It's just like a small screen school.
Cool.
It's a magical place. Just it's a strange time.
Yeah, I got my PhD from CUNY, from the Graduate Center. So
Oh, what an amazing place, right?
Isn't it? It's awesome.
Oh, so many in English. Was that right?
Yeah, in English.
Yeah, there are some unbelievable people there.
Yeah, there really are.
Yeah.
So cool.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
In case you guys haven't figured it out yet, Dan actually knows everybody in education.
I was wondering about that.
That's not true.
Personal mental Rolodex.
Yeah.
Kate, you want to check out his depth of knowledge about Iowa?
There we go. Okay. My heart is full just seeing all you guys. It's been a long week, but it's been a good week, right? So Dan, thanks for being here. I'm Kate Miller. I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. We are not in compliance with our state governor right now. So we don't know if we're going to get credit for the days that we're actually teaching. But it's all right. Des Moines, I teach at the Magnet School. So I have kids from 10 different middle schools and 5 different high schools, plus some of the surrounding schools. And it's just it's been a really great experience. And then getting to know the pivotal educators, one of the things that it made me do this year that I haven't done in the past is I reached out to a bunch of the seniors that are now in their freshman year of college. And we've been having Zoom meetings Tuesdays with Miller. And it's just been fun just to kind of help them and actually, just talk through some things that they're experiencing. And I probably wouldn't have done that without this group. So thank you very much.
So, nice to meet you, Kate.
Great, Kate. Brian?
Brian McKenzie. I teach at Newark Collegiate Academy in Newark, New Jersey. This is my 12th year, and it's the KIPP High School in the city. Well, now one of 2. I forget we have a second one because they just started 2 years ago. But I've taught all the math subjects except for Algebra 2. And I currently teach pre-calc, Calc AB, and Calc BC.
Ryan, do any of your students end up in the Cooperman Scholars Program?
Lots of them, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were Franklin and Marshall was the school that workshopped that with a colleague named Sean Jenkins, who was one of the 3 leaders getting it going. And roughly about 10 kids, Cooperman scholars a year, were enrolling at F&M by the time I finished my time serving there 2 years ago. Fantastic, fantastic people. And
Yeah, your name was familiar to me because I had an alumni. She just graduated from my school, where I graduated from, Emory. She actually was our first Cooperman scholar, and she was at Franklin and Marshall. So I recognize your name through that connection.
Yeah. Who was that? Do you remember?
Inaya Shabazz.
Oh yeah. Cool. It's so good. Well, nice to meet you, Brian.
Nice to meet you.
TK.
Hey, Dan. How's it going? My name is Takeru Nagayoshi, and I also go by TK. I'm a Massachusetts English and research teacher. I teach AP Lit and AP Research in New Bedford, Massachusetts. I'm also the state's 2020 Teacher of the Year, so it's been interesting representing educators and students in a time of pandemic, really understanding and seeing all of the policy failures that led to the reasons why we are all here today. And I'm also wearing Pivotal Network merch today.
Congratulations. Your recognition is really the recognition of everybody in this network. So way to go.
Caitlin?
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you. My name is Caitlin. I teach 11th grade biology in Lawrence, Massachusetts, and I also teach a senior research class. And today was my first day of my 7th year, and it was interesting. It was good, but it was definitely different. But yeah, happy to be here and see everyone tonight.
Caitlin, what kind of school do you teach in?
A public high school.
Yep. I asked because I had Cristo Rey on the brain, because there was a Cristo Rey school in Lawrence too that I from which Georgetown also enrolled a few students, and good stuff. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Rodrigo?
Hello, I'm Rodrigo Garcia. I'm from Brownsville, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley. Just like Rita, I'm tired of sitting all day. So I'm literally standing right now, trying to find the best position. I've taught 25 years. This is year number 26. I teach AP World History Modern, AP European History. So in Brownsville, I did middle school for 9 years and high school for the past 16. We have unusual challenges here with underrepresentation that I'm sure you're aware of, when you have like some very obscure, geographically like cornered parts of the country. We're it. I'm compelled to share my experiences with my students, and I teach 9th and 10th graders in World, and I teach 11th and 12th graders in Euro. I'm going to tell you right now, there's no greater joy I've had today than seeing everybody here on my screen. And Dan, I'm glad to be here, and anytime I have an excuse for one of these, I'll take it. So great to have you here, Dan.
Thanks, Rodrigo. I was able to visit Rio Grande Valley in the era before COVID, which feels like it was a century ago, but it was only January, I think. And I met a lot of students and families. Was there connecting with schools and for different reasons. But one of the things that I really love about the Rio Grande Valley is the passionate commitment to education that the families demonstrate, educators demonstrate. It was so palpable. I think that's the last trip I've made before COVID to do something, that was life enhancing like that. It was really great. So I'm really, really glad to meet you today.
Antonio, take us back to California here, where we hope all's okay with you.
Yes. Okay. Thanks. And actually, I'm gonna echo many of you in a few things. One of them is like, I was at school because I needed to go move some stuff in the back room for science because they're checking whatever it is, admin. And I'm driving. It's like, wait a minute, it's Thursday. I gotta be in this meeting. I better hurry up, And I just came in and put it on the phone, and I tried to get in there, and like Shane, the shirt, I just got it too. So I just opened it, but I didn't put it on. But so cool, and it's really, I'm really glad to see everybody. It's a really nice thing to do, So I wasn't gonna miss this meeting, And so I'm in California and near LA in Pomona, Gary High School. I've been teaching for some 26 years, I think now, and I've taught science, 9 through 12, all kind of grades and all kind of whatever is there. Currently, I'm teaching biology in 9th grade and AP Environmentals with 11 and 12 graders, so I have the two extremes. And so the AP Environmental has been a very enriched class for us with California climate, weather, and everything that is happening. So it's been an opportunity for us to give it a spin, with all what is happening. And biology, of course, virus is like what we're talking about right now. So, so I'm glad to be here with you. I'm glad that you join us, and I'm really happy to see everybody.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Allison, taking us back to Texas.
Yes, sorry I was late. I was in a Zoom about all the things, as you guys know. I'm Allison Even. I teach in San Antonio, Texas. This is my 7th year teaching. I used to teach in Brownsville, Texas, taught there for 4 years. So shout out to Rodrigo, love the Valley. I teach seniors IB history. I'm at a KIPP school, and we are the only IB and IB for all KIPP school in the country. And I brag about it, as everyone on this call already knows.
Pretty great. Nice to meet you, Allison.
And Carl.
Hi, Carl Remsen from Leadville, Colorado. Teach at a small rural school in a mountain town not too far from one of the other locations at the Aspen Institute. But of course, Leadville and Aspen are pretty worlds apart in terms of where they've come from their old mining days. And I teach math and personal finance at the public school here in town.
Carl, what county is your school in?
We are in Lake County.
We have for those that may know, the Aspen Institute has an office and a campus in Aspen, Colorado. I work in the DC office primarily, but the Aspen campus is, it's like a 70-year-old place. It's a retreat center. It's nestled in a mountain community that now has gotten very wealthy, as Carl was saying. Tremendous inequities surrounding Aspen in a variety of counties, including, I learned, some counties going on a 4-day school week. I don't know if yours is in that. Are you in that boat?
We went to a 4-day school week this year.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. So that's we got to be able to do better. Society's got to do better than that. It's good to meet you. Thank you.
Okay, Dan. So that's probably the best way. So Dan, I mean, you've been a teacher most of your life, so you know that the thing you do if you want to brag about something is you show off the people who make it up. So my classroom, I'd say my students, but here I would say my teachers. So now, Dan, welcome to the Pivotal Network, because all you've met before is Jerome and myself, but now you've actually met the Pivotal Network.
Yeah, it's even you and Jerome are pretty great, but it's scaling it's the big bang. It's fantastic.
So let me ask. Let me ask a couple of the questions kind of from the list, but I actually want to start with one that's not even on the list, because folks have now heard kind of the official introduction to you and my personal narrative about being lured by ice cream. But there were a lot of things you were assigned to do in the president's office at Georgetown, and everyone in this group knows Georgetown's commitment to this work. But for you, it's not just a part of the job. You didn't have to make the career decisions you've made, and you didn't have to make these investments. So why do you do this work, Dan? Why have you chosen so singularly, in a way that's recognized across the country by presidents of universities and colleges across the country, the rarity of your investment in this work? Why do you do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I want to accept the premise of the question, but because everybody on this call is committed to education and is committed deeply and personally, passionately coming out of who you are. So I guess I would just say, like all of you, probably the if it matters, the life story that I lived as a child made me believe that the right calling for me was to help other people develop and develop a society equitably. And education was both a way to help individuals flourish and also a way to help the society flourish, that you could do both. And I got that insight, just because I grew up in Baltimore City at a time when education was really critical to sort of saving the future of our family. My mom grew up in foster care in Boston, and she had 2 children. She was young and working, and then started going to college in her 30s. And so she hadn't had good foster care and good education. It was in Weston, Massachusetts. Then we wouldn't have had so many strong things in our life. So people invested in her as a child, and her as a teenager. She was super, super smart person. And she went to, when my father and she divorced, she had to take care of 2 kids by herself. And so she went to Towson College, very affordable college option, while teaching school at a Catholic girls' school in Baltimore City in a day. And I was graduating from 6th grade. She was graduating from Towson. I don't know how old she was, 33, 34. And then like so many other single women, single parents who get a degree, she was ready for another degree because she got that degree, the latter. And so she went into a master's program in history, which she liked. And it was a really important point here. I can't tell you that when I was in 7th and 8th grade, I got all the deepest moral meanings of it all, but she liked history. And she had to raise 2 kids, and she needed money, but she liked history. So she kept working the day and studying history at night. And now at the University of Maryland, in their master's program, professors spotted her. I think she was probably older than most of the students, and she was really committed to it. And they encouraged her to get a PhD. And so she was in her 40s when she got her PhD. And her topic was not considered history by many, but it was supported by that department. It was prostitutes in the American West and the founding of the westward expansion, and sex workers were brought with people that were doing the things they were doing. And that was she wrote her dissertation, became a book on that theme. She couldn't really get hired to teach at any colleges except Gallaudet, the National University for the Deaf, offered her a job if she would spend a year first learning sign language. And so she did that, and then taught at Gallaudet for a number of years, and wrote a book about women prisoners in the American West. And then the Utah State, which had a great department of frontier history, and they realized, hey, this scholar out here at Gallaudet is doing work we should be doing. And so they recruited her out, and she became the editor of the Journal of Frontier History, or Journal of Western History, it might have been called, and then wrote a couple other books. And she passed away a couple of years ago. But her journey from being a single mom in Baltimore with 2 kids to take care of, living in a row house that was her mother-in-law's, and her mother-in-law had died, and so we moved into that house. That was, from there, she developed herself. But she developed herself in a way that adds to the value of life for all of us. And she wrote history that people from different life experience wouldn't have written, wouldn't have thought to write. So, when you're in there working to provide access to students in your worlds, low-income students, first in their family to go to college, one thing you can be sure of, we can be sure of, is that as they get access to an expansive education, to one that opens them to their potential and to the world, they will use that education in ways that change for the better the fabric of our society, that provide more expansive opportunity for others, more insights. It's just the natural way it happens. If we open up opportunity, welcome people, support them, their contribution adds to the whole. And the contribution they make will be different because they're coming from a different context than many others that have had access to education. And so we can actually, this is, it's getting a little philosophical here, but we can actually help everybody by making sure that people that can pursue their development to the fullest of their potential. But she also had the spark to study history. Why she did? She needed money. It would have been great for her to have pursued a field like accounting, or a field like being like working in a legal office or something. But she had a calling in herself, and because it was her calling, an affordable, accessible opportunity to keep developing herself meant that it was her learning was the expression of who she was, and that's pretty powerful. It's pretty powerful. So my dad was a public school teacher, and so through him, I learned about and saw the staggering inequities, historic, generational, racial, in the Baltimore City school system. He just passed away last year. So the two, I saw education as the water of life almost for people. How do we give more people the chance? And I won't go any further, but I had different experiences of my own where educators invested in me, and where I felt the joy of discovery and the feeling of community and the support of an older person that showed faith in me so that I would have more faith in myself. So it made me want to join that group. You made me want to join your group, because I saw it from my mom. I saw it through my dad's eyes as important for society. And I felt it in people's investment in me when I was growing up, and not, wondering where I would take my talent. So every other answer, I promise, will be shorter, but you asked a question that required an autobiography. So sorry.
So I asked it in part, Dan, because one of the things that I've always found most compelling about anybody we meet in this work is what brings them. And we actually asked all of our pivotal educators back this summer to describe 3 pivotal, because everything we call here is pivotal, experiences that they had, right? These kind of like seminal moments that help define kind of who they are and why they do what they do. So thought it was only fair that they hear some of yours. So Dan, I wanted to ask, so once you emerged into your professional life, you spent the first part of your professional life first at Georgetown and then at Franklin and Marshall, kind of within higher education, looking at the undermatching challenge. And now you've changed perspectives on this, right? And the American Talent Initiative is really all about the undermatching problem. So you did a lot of work kind of trying to get higher education to reach across that Grand Canyon divide between higher ed and K-12. Now at the Aspen Institute, you've got a much broader purview. The Aspen Institute works on education, but it works on huge ranges of issues. How has your perspective on undermatching kind of been shaped, not just by the experience in higher ed and being on kind of one side of the divide of education, but now at the Aspen Institute, where you're explicitly looking to make connections between quite disparate parts of society?
Yeah. So I think my experience about I wouldn't have had, none of us would have had the vocabulary undermatching, and maybe there's other words to use, but basically the idea is how do we make sure that students are invested in and supported to get the opportunities that they have earned, and or that they deserve by being human. Either way, you could go either way with that. And I first started thinking about that when I was working in Washington, D.C. as a college student with court-supervised youth, and to try to create at Georgetown as an undergraduate alternative ways for students to be supported besides being put in correctional facilities. And then I met a lot of great kids through that. And it was in the 80s. And we also we built a program, but that also experienced tremendous amount of tragedy in the 80s in Washington, D.C., in the era of crack. And not just crack. Actually, just saying crack doesn't describe it right. Segregation, lack of opportunity, government indifference, all that, and crack. I then worked when I was in my 20s with recent arrivees from El Salvador and Guatemala and Washington, D.C., families that walked through Central America, rode on the top of trains or on buses to get to the border in order to get to eventually the capital of the U.S., where there was a Salvadoran community especially to join. Incredible passion for education, but also they were just trying to get away from death squads. And the DC at that time actually was confronted with a massive migration. A whole town, 5,000 people came up together, a place called Inti Pucá in El Salvador. And so there I saw talent again, not the talent of kids in the court system not being given access to resources, but the talent of families that had to flee the place they loved to go somewhere else. It's incredible talent to survive if you're a child through the turnstiles of an indifferent court system, or to survive the harrowing journey with a coyote to the north. Like, that's talent. That's talent. And then I taught in a prison in Washington, D.C. in my 20s, Lorton Reformatory, and one in that's now been torn down, and then one in Baltimore called Maryland House of Corrections. And so again, what I saw was talent. These it was all men that I taught in these two different places. Men who basically were stuck in a block of rock with essentially a civil death. They had no rights. They had no civil engagement possible for them, but long sentences, and staring at a maximum security cell with a roommate they didn't choose under a structure of life they wouldn't want, and still alive. What do? Do you turn yourself off and try to be numb, forget it all, or do you actually engage and try to grow? Those that engaged and try to grow by taking classes, risking all the despair you feel if you let yourself feel it, that's talent. So that was through my whole 20s. That was my 20s, was all those different contexts of being exposed to human talent and wondering how could that talent be supported, people that have to become who they are trying to become. I had to make a decision. Do I work how do I actually work? Because I wasn't getting paid much money, all these jobs. I didn't know where I was going. And I decided I wanted to go into higher ed because I wanted to think through some of the questions of culture and literature and storytelling narrative and how they participate in either social transformation or social replication, depending what you're talking about. And so I went to CUNY, which was a really great place for that. Back to Rita, really great place to really think about the social function of literature, functions, and I didn't know where that was going. I never know where things are going. I don't know now. And so when I was in my program at CUNY, I was like, good student and working hard. And I'll give you the short version. The chancellor of that system needed a speechwriter. They called the graduate center where I was. The graduate center called the English program. The English program asked me, do you want to go be a speechwriter for the chancellor of the biggest urban system? And so I went and started doing that and started learning about the system issues through the experience of trying to write helpful, framing of what the chancellor was trying to do. And you think, okay, that's where education comes in. But then I ended up not doing education further and going to HHS because President Clinton was elected. A woman named Donna Shalala was picked as health secretary. She needed a speechwriter. She heard the guy at CUNY is a good writer. She asked me, would you want to come write? I said, well, why not, right? Why not? And even though I was supposed to be applying for jobs teaching English, when was the secretary of HHS going to need somebody to help and learn with her? Again, when was I going to get that opportunity? I'm a Democrat. There'd never been a Democrat in office in my adult years. So that was my one shot. So I did that. That then led to Georgetown asking me, did I want to come to Georgetown to work? And the way it was worked out was if I could teach and be in the English department, I'd also do the organizational work. I didn't know where that was going, nor did I know I'd be leading a college, a few years later, nor did I know from there I'd be at the Aspen Institute. What am I saying here? I'm just saying that it's good to be open to change, and it's good to be reflecting on what are your deep core values that help you feel connected to your identity. We always ask, how am I living my values? And if living our values puts us in a place of constancy and commitment to doing at a deeper level every year, the thing we've been doing, that's fantastic. And that's where I've been. But then every 7 or 8 years, there's a chance to just do a pivotal, just doing a pivot, do something different. And I've been, say, well, why not? Why not? And luckily, my wife and spouse, Karen, and our children we've all worked together as a family. So a pivot has to work for the whole group. It can't just work if you have a family for one. We've been able to do those pivots well. So I did like this. There's a narrative here, but I can't claim it. The narrative was, I grew up in a low-income community, and my family was saved by education. And from that, I wanted to then work with students similarly situated to help them as I've been helped. And I did that through my 20s. But then I wanted to work also at the system or structural level. I didn't know what that meant. No one's going to elect me to office. So I figured, okay, I'll go get a PhD and study what I like, culture. I did that, which gave me the chance to work at the system level of CUNY, and then the federal government, and then Georgetown. And I came to like working in complex institutions, as long as I could keep my hands on people too, which I was able to do all the way up to this work now at Aspen Institute. Aspen Institute is a large people-serving nonprofit that does a million things. We have 80 different programs, climate change, global security, public health, all kinds of work, including work in higher education at both the 2-year college and 4-year college levels, both critical. And I just thought, well, why not try more? And I guess the trying more was not more responsibility, because you have the most responsibility, what you do, but more exposure to more ideas. And I do think that some of the problems confronting education cannot be solved by educators alone, because they're system and societal level. And so they require complementary solutions to what we can do at the level of the student-teacher relationship, the curriculum, the classroom, the school system, that we have to support educators in other ways besides supporting education. And I got more to learn, but that's sort of how I'm thinking about it now. That was another long answer. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. Can you ask me like a yes or no question?
I think the pivotal educators are complaining at the moment here, Dan. Let me ask you, I'm going to ask you just because you could probably name a lot of things, but I wanted to turn it over to the pivotal educators in a minute here. Oh. But see, one thing that you've seen in the last, this year is filled with challenges, right? It's like the answer to anything when things are going wrong is people just say it's 2020. Tell us one really positive thing where you've been able to see a good intersection between individuals' efforts and systems, and you've seen something good and positive happen that gives you hope when you're looking forward. What's a good example of people like the people on this screen doing powerful work, but doing powerful work that then melds with systems? Mm-hmm.
So one of the 80 Aspen programs is called the Center for Native American Youth. And our leader, whose name is Nikki, gathers together young people in all kinds of ways from tribal communities to work on education, employment, suicide prevention, and really it's about empowerment. Like the whole governance model of the Center for Native American Youth is to foster agency with the young. It's all about co-creation, cultural pride, and the method by which Nikki and her colleagues work doesn't support student agency and creativity. It doesn't replicate a power dynamic that is part of the problem for those students in society. And the students are from different interest types, and different educational, sort of readiness. There's one of our students is a first-year student at Yale this year. Many are going to local schools. Some are not yet in school or trying to figure it out. And she brings it all together. And she brought together for a panel discussion, because we put out a State of Native Youth every year report. She brought together a bunch of the students for an event right before COVID. And this young man named Trenton was speaking. And, you've all got students in your world You can see that incredible spark, incredible gifts. And there he is. He was out of school before joining the Center for Native American Youth. And now he's helping develop the agenda for the Center for Native American Youth. He's in college. And somebody asked him from the crowd, what's something you've learned from getting into this? He said, well, I guess that, I've learned to be engaged. I got to be at the table. And I used to think that not voting and not participating in society was an act of rebellion. And now I know it's an act of surrender. That to me is actually where the person and the program and maybe the system connect. Because the Trentons in our society have got to see themselves as active agents and creators of their lives and society if we're to have systemic change. So, I've been definitely thinking about him every time something terrible happens that we experience or see in the news. Second thing, I'll just say real fast, it's a little bit different, but it's important. It's a little more structural. The Aspen Institute's College Excellence Program is led by a colleague named Josh Weiner. And Josh's work, in part, he and his team, he has about 20 colleagues that all work together. So one of their big projects is the American Talent Initiative, through which they have, this is what Heidi referenced earlier, we kind of created out of Franklin and Marshall, we have 130 colleges with high graduation rates that have all committed together to increasing the number of Pell Grant students in their student bodies. And the 130 schools are, a lot of very highly selective schools, including Georgetown, and the whole Ivy League is in it. And let's face it, we know that's not the only thing needed in education. That's just one piece. But I do think opening the doors more widely for the schools that have the most resources and the highest graduation rates is important for many reasons, for individuals, but also because we do know that the graduation rates of low-income students when they go to high graduation rate schools is almost always the same. And we do know that the economic opportunities for students and social opportunities are very strong, and it should matter, even as we're dealing with massive inequalities in all different levels, that one thing we should try to focus on is making sure that the highly selective schools understand that if they truly respect talent, they'll look to the first-gen community and open the doors more widely, with all that entails. So anyway, a good thing to say is that through the first 3 years of the American Talent Initiative, whose goal is 50,000 more students at these schools, we're at 20,000. That's the good news. So we're getting there. We're making progress. The schools are doing more. They're enrolling more. Of course, they have to graduate, but that's not something to worry about too much, because if like take Princeton, if they have a 98% graduation rate, their Pell Grant graduation rate is 98%. That's the way it works. That's one reason why when you're working to get your students access to high graduation rate schools, you're actually creating a likelihood greater that they're going to graduate. Not the only thing in life, I know that, but it is important. We don't want students getting debt and no degree, for sure. That's tough. But now a downside of what I just described is that our progress of getting all the schools to increase their Pell Grant was uneven in year 3, pretty much flat. So we got 20,000 in the first 2 years, but the third year has been flat. We don't have authority, so we have to cajole, inspire, and push the schools that aren't continuing to grow. Some did grow, some didn't. And Lord knows what's going to happen this year, year 4, because of COVID. We have to expect, unfortunately, a lot of first-gen and lower-income kids are, going part-time, are taking a leave, or staying close to home, or are having to meet other needs for their family or address other needs for themselves, and lacking the residential environment, it's just hard for them to do that. So I think we're going to lose ground this year. I could be wrong, but societally, I think we're going to lose ground, and we need a massive national commitment to regaining ground lost in education and 5 other areas: public health, employment. I wish it was just so simple. So anyway, there's 2 things. But the upside of that is I have seen these schools some of them, very public and private, really understanding who you're working with and understanding that to be true to their values, they need to have a more comprehensive strategy to recruitment, retention, and investment in first-gen students. And I could name a lot of schools that have done it. And so and they've made themselves better schools all around by doing that, which is part of the beauty of all this.
So, Dan, we're at 7.
I'm not in a hurry. I'm not in a hurry, but you are. You've got your, you got things to do.
I was gonna say, usually I'm like wedged in between. Dan's like, I've got time for you. And then I find out there's like a college president on one side and like the president of a country on the other side. And I'm always like, so let me just turn it over so that the chat's been going strong with people who are loving what you're talking about, Dan. Are there some questions that some of our pivotal educators want to ask of Dan, and we can keep this going for a little bit longer? I also want to respect if people do need to drop off the call for get on with life. But otherwise, does somebody want to toss in a question?
I have a question if you don't mind.
Rodrigo,
so this is
please.
Rodrigo from Brownsville, Texas. So 2020, you know, we're all learning how to do distance and remote. And I had a conversation with our tech teacher on campus, and you know, we'll be in the classroom next week because, you know, we can't challenge our governor over here. We're really stuck. And the last thing he mentioned to me was like, hey, despite learning all these new softwares and programs, he's like, the positive is, you know, we're learning technology, we're adapting. And you know, even me in my 26th year, you know, my learning curve is steep, but I'm learning. So Dan, my question is, do you foresee the opportunity of online education after high school being a possible equalizer for first gen students? I'm going to take, like, and I'm sorry if you all heard my story before, but you know, down where I am, I had like 2 colleges, maybe 3 when I was going to you know, 19 to like 22, like 3 opportunities to go to college within 100 miles of me. Now my odds are a little bit higher. I think I have 5 colleges now, so my students have that opportunity. But where we are, we don't have the same opportunity that someone even in rural Oklahoma has. So is it possible that in this 21st century, we might be able to push our students to more opportunity by online learning? And, you know, I know there are pitfalls, and I'll be silent and hear you respond.
We probably know the same amount, or you know a lot more than me, but because I think you're right, providing access to learning experiences is critical. And if we can provide quality access to students who otherwise would not be able to pursue any experience, that feels to me like a moral calling, and it's really worth pursuing. And there's a lot of ways that could play out, you know, including access for students on weekends and evenings to educators who are living life from their own background and can share with them, you know, ways of thinking about life as to complement school. It could be training for students after college for particular fields, where you end up in some kind of partnership relationship with employers to make sure students are getting the skills. It could be more somewhat hybrid, you know, for some students who can travel a little, but also really need to be grounded someplace. If you're, you know, like if a person's like my mom, a single mother who wants to learn more, but there's nowhere to get to because she's got 2 kids, she can't commute, there's nothing to commute to, this feels like it's necessary. So I like the idea of more creative options available to more people to make connections that bring students exposure to ideas, to opportunity, to skills. Totally behind that idea. I think societal investment is needed in a big way on things like broadband, which should be treated like electricity, you know, a utility that all deserve and need. and other things that we could all come up with. So there's an agenda here, so that it's possible for people to actually benefit from what you're talking about. And the only place I want to not push back but qualify is that I also really believe that the selective institutions, whatever their type, that have high graduation rates should be challenged and held accountable to expand access to all as well, with all that means, so that the availability of online quality learning doesn't an excuse to close doors of opportunity for students who would like and can benefit from the residential experience. And because sometimes I worry that, not you, of course, but other people are just trying to make money off low-income kids while giving them something that's substandard that that they pay for but doesn't help them. And then they say, "Oh, good, we're helping." So there's a lot to that I don't fully know. And the for-profit education world probably has some really bad actors and maybe some good actors that could partner with us for what you're saying. But I do get it, because I taught in prison, and I saw the lifeline of education for people behind bars to be able to have access to ideas and access to dialogue and access to the ability to create their own learning because they've been prompted to do so. So that's what our society should be about. I totally agree with you about the potential for that. Completely agree. I'll say one other quick thing. I feel like you're inviting me to say it. I don't know. Was it Caitlin? Are you the one in San Antonio? No, somebody's in San Antonio here. Oh yeah, Allison is. You said you're at a KIPP school. So I was just thinking about how there's a student that was at Franklin and Marshall named Jeanette Berlanga who went to a KIPP school in San Antonio. I don't know if you ended up knowing her or not. But
Name, but she's definitely one of our alum because we are the only one.
Yeah. So Jeanette was from KIPP San Antonio, came to F&M, and she showed up at the school. Had never been on the campus before. The first day of school, she played soccer, but the way she played soccer was like club soccer. It wasn't like prep school soccer like these kids at F&M played. And she didn't know anybody, didn't know anything. I greeted her that first day, and she was so homesick the second she walked on campus. She was so homesick the second. It wasn't like a day. It was the instant. It was, and we know that feeling. And without going into all these details, she's in law school now, back in San Antonio, and the things I saw happen for her over time, ups and downs, but mostly going up from that residential experience of getting away. It mattered that we invested in her education and provided full financial need and everything she needed covered. Had to do that. The payoff is that she and the girls she played soccer with, all of them together, grew as people because of that contact and the breakthroughs that emerged from it. So I only say that to say that we got to somehow use tech to promote equity, not let tech discourage expansion of opportunity. And maybe, Rodrigo, you have to be almost the conscience of whoever is providing tech-enabled education to your students. Because if somebody's not the conscience, they might not get as much as they should get.
Hey, Tia Wanda, you dropped a great question in the chat for Dan. Do you want to ask it?
Okay, I want to say one more thing too, by the way, I want to say this because it's really relevant to this point I made, and Jeanette wouldn't mind me saying this. Jeanette's passion for education came from her family, was nurtured by her teachers, came from her family. And part of that passion was that her father died doing landscaping. And that became the beating heart of her soul was her father's commitment to their family and his incredible sacrifice and the love of their family, and that all that, like, I don't have the vocabulary. And she wouldn't mind me saying this to you because we've talked about it a lot. That happened when she was about 11 or 12. And that was her burning drive for 7 years of working with her mother in all the ways they worked on weekends and evenings, doing housekeeping, in studying. She was named captain of the boys soccer team at KIPP. She was all passion, drive. You know, when they talk about grit and resilience, they actually should just talk about Jeanette, should be the word they use instead of grit. And so when she got to Franklin and Marshall with all the different challenges, she handled them, but there were hard times. But the most important thing that happened during that time, besides her own all-around learning, was that she realized that she had blocked grief from her father's death. That 8 years of blocking the grief. Not that she didn't grieve, but that she had some things she needed to work through to move forward. And that part of education, especially for everybody, but for first-gen kids, that part that's around learning what are the emotional burners that make us who we are, and how do we understand them and use them and regulate them and work with them, that's really important too. That's so powerful and important. It's not just, and counseling's a part of it, but community's a part of it. Community's such a part of it. Feeling seen and valued, trusted, you can trust the place you are, because only when you trust the place where you are can you take the risk of growth. So I'm just babbling on about all this, but the reason I'm babbling on is because you're the ones that are working with so many students right now who, like Jeanette, are processing these complex life experiences, forming all sorts of ideas of hope or drive, or perhaps a dark side of life because of these struggles and challenges. And part of what we're doing as educators is investing in their minds, but part of it is that we're earning their respect so they can feel the respect of someone they respect. Because when they feel the respect of someone they respect, they will be able to believe in themselves and push forward in ways that you won't see, but you will have helped to make happen. And that's why I love being around this group right now. And you're just making me think about the students, some of the ones I know who've had teachers like you, and how that teaching is so much more than the teaching part of it. It's so much more. And you know, that you have a community that's trying to figure out how to think about this and talk about this and get others to understand that, it, you know, blows me away. We had a bunch of rural kids at F&M, at Franklin and Marshall as well. We recruited heavily from rural communities as well as from urban communities with what we called our talent strategy. We didn't call it a diversity strategy, though we became much more diverse, but it was we were recruiting with an eye towards recruiting everywhere, but it was about talent. You're defined by talent. We define talent in some ways that, you know, are important: curiosity, drive, work ethic, resilience, saying yes to opportunity, whether you have a little or a lot. We saw that as talent. That more than, definitely, we didn't care about test scores, but you know, I think grades in a college prep curriculum are important. But after that, everything else I just said, you know, is really about these qualities of the person. And similarly, because I mentioned, you know, some students from urban backgrounds, but we had so many students from rural communities that hit the grounds of Franklin and Marshall campus and felt that their cultural capital was looked down on, not, you know, or not seen at all. All low-income students face that. Sometimes rural students face that in a way because nobody knows to talk about it, depending where they go. And I really think that that each of you working in a rural community, sometimes you're also thinking through how to have the family, the community, not feel that the students in leaving the community are rejecting the community when they go to college. And that can be true in anywhere, I know also. But I just want to encourage you, I guess, to think about the assets and opportunities and inner lives of first-gen rural students, first-gen immigrant students, first-gen US-born domestic students, kind of like think of them really keep talking together about what they all have in common. Maybe some of the hope for the country in the future is that students from these different walks of life who all have this hope to pursue, again, develop what's inside of them, can together, partly through you, see their connectedness, see the commonalities they have among them. And definitely those of us that are teaching them can understand that there's bonds to build among students that may look different or come from different parts of the country, but actually have an enormous amount of similarity in their heart, mind, and spine.
So Dan, I want to be respectful of your time and everyone's time on the call here, but I think and I'm gonna let Jerome close us out in a minute here, but I think what you were just talking about is so powerful, and Tiawanda was asking about this in the chat as well, because the great talent and strengths that you talk about that we all see look so different from kind of the traditional standards of rigor that higher ed's often looking for, that I think figuring out how to talk about it in ways that are compelling is important. And one of the things that Pivotal Network's going to be working on this fall with teachers is not to how to replicate their tremendous efforts at being a voice for those students through their letters, right? The thing that brought them to us. But I think Tiawanda's question about, it's a real challenge there to take what is so vividly real as talent, but looks so different from the best SAT score in the stack.
Yeah. Okay, so like, I think that I feel like, and I have more work I need to do to be a better advocate for what we're talking about, what we all believe in here, because we are actually trying to break down some myths around, I'll call it achievement ideology. Maybe there's some other ideology that's better called, but these myths that you can size people up and measure them, and then you've got the measure of the person. It's so different, actually. I really think that people that persevere facing challenges, or even persevere against something they don't even know what they're persevering against, but persevere, that's really powerful, especially in the young. People that raise their hand and say, yes, I'm in, I'm trying. We need to encourage that so much more. Something I'm really kind of struggling with right now is I was writing, I left Franklin and Marshall College in summer 2018. I finished there. I'd been there 8 years and went to the Aspen Institute, and learning a new job. There's a lot of Aspen, a lot of stuff to do, a lot to learn, so much to manage that's beyond the work, just the organizational needs or the donors, all that. So I've been trying to write a book, though, about my experiences with students at Franklin and Marshall and at Georgetown, mostly Franklin and Marshall, because I've got so many relationships with students that you've helped to bring to schools like Franklin and Marshall. Thank you. They've been so important to me. I could tell like 50 stories right now. So I'm trying to write a book about this, and I was making a lot of progress. And since COVID, I've basically been completely blocked. I have to rewrite the introduction, and it's messed with my head a little bit. I was pretty close. I was like 2/3 done with a third outline. Maybe you've had that sometimes too, where you're trying to use your voice to share your experience so you can amplify things that others could then act on if you could share it. And that's what I'm trying to do. But I really haven't done a good job since March 15th. And I really haven't. It's partly because there's so much more work to do, and we're all worrying about our families. There's so much else trying to juggle. But this point about giving voice to experience that's what I'm trying to get at. It's really powerful. And just talking to you, being in your company tonight, sort of pushing me, like, come on, I've got to get back into that swing of things. If you guys can do the work that you're doing, people at my part who have had my experiences at the college level should do a better job making sure more people believe that your students are going to be thrivers in college and are going to get the opportunity, are going to then create learning for everybody. So anyway, I'm taking away from this conversation, it's typical with Heidi, I'm taking away a little bit of a challenge. It's like, I got to do better, because I've lost touch with the story I've been trying to write a little bit, because there's so many other things to worry about, and you're just giving me a big challenge. Thank you.
Well, Dan, I just want to say thank you, honestly. I think equally so, you've left us with a lot of things to consider and to challenge ourselves, both as educators, Heidi and I as developers of this program, and us as a community. The things that I jotted down a lot, but the things I jotted down that I think stood out the most was kind of the tail end of what you were saying, and this notion of talent intersecting with cultural capital. And then also, how do we find similarities that may not currently exist, or may not be as present or obvious as others. And I think that in so many ways epitomizes what we are and what we're trying to do. We are seeking incredible talent in so many different spaces with so much different cultural capital that have so many more similarities than any of these people on the screen might have thought of at the beginning of our journey back in March. And so with that, I just want to say thank you. And I think we all are being left here with a very powerful challenge of how we think about this community, and then how we think that the morals and ethics of this community and the ethos of this community translate to our students and to the communities that we all call home in our respective corners of the country. And that being said, I do want to be respectful of our time, and I'm going to bring this time together to a close. But Dan, if you have time and you want to linger, and folks want to linger and continue the conversation, I'm happy to lead the Zoom up. I know I still have some time, but I do want to kind of officially close this so folks who have to hop off can. And what I want to just say in closing is thank you all for showing up. Really good to see all your faces. This is the first part of 3 for our move-in. I think almost everyone's filled out a doodle poll at this point, so we'll be sending out information regarding the other 2 parts of our move-in based upon your availability. And so the other 2 parts will be our unpacking session. We're going to do a formal catch-up and unpack. We're really leaning into this analogy. And then we're going to have a family meeting and have a robust conversation around the new pivotal points that we've revised. And Noah and I have been working diligently in the background to create the new home that we all enter for our Mighty Network platform. And we have some really cool ideas as to how we're going to engage in some robust professional development with you all this semester. But much like the summer, it is a learning process. You all will be contributing to the further development of what we call the Pivotal Network and how we engage with you all. So potluck is coming soon, Denise, for sure. But I will say, be on the lookout. We're going to send some information around what I'm calling the lease agreement, which will be your new contracts for this academic year, as well as your house keys, which will be your official login credentials for the new Mighty Network that we're building. So yes, very much leaning into this. And we are a family, and that's Dan, our virtual platform all these educators communicate on is we're calling the Pivotal House. And so Dan, you soon will be getting an invitation to our house warming later on this in October. So these are all things in the fold. You'll get more information about that, but really good to see you all. And for those of you who didn't get your shirts today, USPS promised me that they'll be there by tomorrow. So we're also going to coordinate a nice group photo too with everyone's pivotal drip.
Cool. Thank you so much. I was looking at the chat room. I just saw this question that Tiawanda asked about how do you fight the thought that expanding the reach would, quote, dummy the rigor and standards that the institutions work so hard to achieve. That's a big question when you're working in higher ed, because people somehow think that they are somehow the guardians of a sacred flame that has these objective standards of merit and achievement that somehow reflect on them as the guardian. And it's all BS. It's all BS. Talent comes in so many forms and so many different backgrounds. And last thought, when I was teaching at Lorton Prison in 1985 or 86, I taught the play Antigone by Sophocles, which is about the individual in the fight against the state. And it was a great book to teach in a prison for people that were been incarcerated by the state. And they were like Antigone. And this one student, whose name was Tony, said something in 11 words that about what's called the field of critical legal studies. And all these academics have written books and articles, impenetrable, you don't know what they're saying, on critical legal studies. He said in 11 words, he distilled it exactly. And he did this 10 years before they were writing critical legal studies. But he said, in short, law represents the interests of those who make law. And the experience that led him to have that insight is barely represented in the academy. But the insight is better expressed than almost everything I've ever heard in the academy. And that just reminds me, for inspiration, that if we can get students that you're teaching into the context where they're invested in, they will be able to come up with insights that no one else could find that will make the world better. And it's a tragedy that Tony, this student, had to come to that insight in prison. And that's why what you're doing is so valuable, because we don't have another generation to waste, so to speak, by locking them up. We need to unlock them. And what you're doing, that's what talent is about. Okay, sorry, I couldn't resist that because that question was so good. Thank you, Tiawanda. Yep.
Dan, thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you, family, for coming today and welcoming Dan as our latest adoptee into our family. We're going to be seeing all of you a lot, and we think about you all the time, and we love you dearly. So be safe, be well, and we'll see you folks soon.